Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. It is our weekend edition, and Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford here. And as I said earlier in the week, I knew that we would probably wait till really today to talk about the debate. Of course, we've had some great guests in studio, people like Max Lucado and others, and next week we have Sean McDowell in studio. So in the midst of all of those activities, we certainly wanted to get some perspective there. At the next break, we're going to have a chance to hear from Gary Bauer, and he's been giving us an update from Washington, D.C., and then we'll get into some other very important religious liberty issues that we often talk about. But since this is really the first time we've had a chance to hear anybody's comments about the debate, second Republican debate in Simi Valley, California, at the Reagan Library. And Penna, any thoughts that you have?
Well, I guess the first thought is, where is the Democrat debates? They don't want a debate. They're trying to protect Hillary Clinton right now. And that was my first reaction to the debate, is that, wow, we've got some really talented candidates out there. And you can look across the field and listen to a debate like that, and you can find out something about the issues that face us. So, you know, there was a lot of theater, there was a lot of fighting, there was certainly a lot of turning on Trump, which was, in a sense, refreshing. But I think my first reaction is an abundance of riches for the Republicans.
Yes. Kelly?
Yeah, I thought a lot of people performed well. I agree with Penna that it's really disgraceful that the Democrats aren't holding debates. I mean, it's like trying to crown somebody. That should never happen in either party. I mean, you've got Bernie Sanders, who's actually passing Hillary Clinton in a number of these states in the polling, and yet they won't debate. I think it's going to be to their own detriment, because what they're going to do is you're going to wait so long that you're going to get all your kinks out at the very last, right before, and it's going to cost you, instead of go ahead and get those things out early, get better, improve. I thought the Republican debate, again, I thought everybody did, or most did really well. My two comments were, and we can talk about these, but number one, I think four of the people sort of stood out to me in the debate. And number two, I thought, it really highlighted something that really needs to change. And that is, we shouldn't have people doing the debates that are trying to get viewership from the debates. That this really childish type of questions of, well, so-and-so said this about you, and how you want to respond to them. I mean, it was so obvious what they were trying to do, and it wasn't to have a good debate. Yeah. It was to create, some sort of food fight and maybe up their ratings. And I just thought it was embarrassing and beneath, really the American people and what they really. But if you ask people, that's not what they wanted to see. They want. I mean, there are sometimes that might be needed, maybe once, but it was the whole night. It was, and I just think they've got to figure out a better way to have people ask questions who aren't sort of with their own issues that they're trying to funnel, whether that's ratings or something else, so that you get good questions that people really care about issues that they're focusing on, and that you would want to know about your president.
Well, they did get the people watching, because there were 20 million people watching the debate. And I think that has a lot to do with Donald Trump and all the attention he's getting. But I do agree that is, I mean, to ask, well, so-and-so said this about you, how do you react? That can be used like once, maybe twice in a debate. It's been used forever. But this was it was nonstop all the way through.
Sure
It was
was.
almost like he couldn't think of substantive questions to ask. And so he had to ask that. And that was ridiculous. I did think most of the candidates did fairly well in turning that around to try to get their positions on policies out. So they showed they were serious. And we also saw that candidates had thought out how they were going, if they were going to attack Trump, they had thought out how they were going to do it. And some did it. So we saw a little bit of that. Now, I have no idea. This Trump phenomenon is beyond predicting, I think. But I do think the two top, in Iowa, the two top poll getters, Trump and Carson just didn't do himself any favors. He just didn't look presidential. He looked weak. His answers were vague. I was really surprised to hear him say that he told President Bush not to go into Afghanistan. That was kind of weird. And, so I don't think he did himself any favors at all. Trump didn't either, but you never know because he's just got this enduring group of people that supports him. I think there's going to be a point, though, where people want more substance, and he didn't show any again.
One of the articles I posted here, Why Debates Matter, because some people say, well, just because I'm not good in a debate doesn't mean I won't be a good president. I mean, we can think of some very effective presidents in our history that would not have done well in this format in terms of looks or style or whatever. So that's an issue. But at the same time, let's face it, being able to be in front of the camera and be able to articulate your point of view is really important. And I think most people felt that Carly Fiorina won that one in terms of just pure presentation. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that the debates have become an important part of becoming president, I think, is really something that really ought to change. It's not what the job is. I mean, we're not electing the best debater. We're electing an executive. And so we don't really get to see that. We get to be, who's the best orator, or, that would even be better than who's the best debater. If there's a very great difference between being a person who can give a good speech and being a good debater. So it's like this major qualification that really is never going to be used. I mean, when is the president in a situation where they have to be in this instantaneous debate? I mean, it doesn't happen. So I think it's a really bad idea for us to have this, but I do think you're right. I think Carly Fiorina performed the best in that debate. I think also Rubio, Huckabee, I think even Christie had a really good night for Christie. But I'll say this, Fiorina did in both debates very well, but I think she also made a big mistake. I mean, she had a very powerful line about the Planned Parenthood videos, but what she said was factually incorrect. And that really, I think, really hurts your credibility. And so I think that you need to prepare. You need to look at those Planned Parenthood videos. You need to and come out with a really strong statement. But she could have given a very strong statement without, and I'm not saying she meant to. I think she made a mistake. But that's the kind of thing you don't want the president doing. And so I think that is going to come back to haunt her a little bit. Somebody can stand up there and beat the table and look really good. But if you find out the next day what they said is wrong, you're going to look at them a little scant next time. So that's the kind of thing that maybe people will give a pass to somebody once, but I think once is it.
Yeah, I have a feeling she won't do it again because she does seem fairly well prepared on things. I sense that she perhaps listened to the video and didn't watch it or something, because there was a comment made about that intact baby that was going to be dissected and all of that, but you didn't exactly see it the way she said. So, that's too bad for her. I think also, though, that Carly Fiorina did very well in the debates, but this is one case where she doesn't have a ground game at all. And if she really rises, to get that together quickly by Iowa could be a struggle for her. Also, she's not a person who's been proven in office at all. And I still contend that that's very dangerous to put that person into the White House.
Yes. Kelly,
people don't know her beliefs. They don't know her beliefs yet either. A lot of people don't. We can talk a little bit about that, but that's as important, obviously more important than how you do in a debate. So people need to understand where the candidates stand as well.
We're going to take a break, and Gary Bauer will join us briefly. We'll probably get him to say a few things about the debate, also about what's happening with Iran and some of the votes on Capitol Hill. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, political correctness seems to be in full force these days in the public school, and common sense seems to be in short supply. The latest example is Laura, who was sent home with a note explaining that she could not bring a Wonder Woman lunchbox to school. I'm not kidding. You must be wondering what could be offensive about bringing a superhero lunchbox to school. Well, the school officials were glad to explain. The dress code of the school requests that students not bring violent images into the building. I think we could all agree with that. But the interpretation went the wrong direction. They defined violent characters as those individuals who solve problems using violence. They therefore argued that superheroes fall into that category. Jonah Goldberg reminds us in a recent column that many other people fit into that category. George Washington and all the founding fathers certainly could be considered people who used violence to solve a problem. Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt could be put into that category along with most of our presidents. Our current president used SEAL Team 6 to take out Osama bin Laden. The security guard at the school and local mall, as well as any police officer, could be put into that category. Any member of the military, including everyone at the Pentagon, would qualify. I understand why the school administrators don't want to send the message that violence is a way to solve problems. They don't want students thinking that hitting another student's a good thing. But there's a bigger problem here. We seem to be telling the next generation that violence is never the way to solve a problem. It may not be the best solution, but in times of war and terrorism, it may be the only way to solve a problem. At the very least, can't school officials use some common sense? Make a distinction between supervillains who use the powers for evil and superheroes who rescue people and use their powers for good. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Giving Films, 90 Minutes in Heaven, based on a true story, in theaters now, rated PG-13. More information at 90minutesinheaventhemovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Weekend edition today, and we have an opportunity to hear from a number of guests. Of course, Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, but also joining us by phone, Gary Bauer. Gary, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
We have been talking about the debate. I do want to get to Iran in just a minute, but
Sure.
I'd love to get some of your thoughts as well, because all of us that get the various end-of-day report appreciate some of the things that you've been saying. And, of course, the debate night was something that gave us a chance to once again think about how many would owe any kind of allegiance to Ronald Reagan. I think Ronald Reagan got a lot of mentions that night, didn't he?
He did, yes. No, it was quite striking that everybody wants to be the next Reagan. Look, it was an interesting night. There were some things that were, I thought, fantastic. Carly Fiorina's very emotional statement about the Planned Parenthood controversy and why a nation with our kind of values should not be funding an organization like that. I thought that others had really good moments. Marco Rubio talking about a number of foreign policy issues. It was interesting watching the competition between Donald Trump and Governor Bush. So there were a lot of cross currents. But I have to say, if there's one complaint, and I would say this to all the candidates, don't fall for the liberal media desire here, which is to see Republicans tearing each other apart. I thought it was really striking how often when a question was asked, it was actually a question that would invite one contender to attack another contender. And on those occasions when the different candidates would bring up President Obama or Hillary Clinton to make their point, they were often interrupted by the questioners and said, no, I didn't ask you that. I asked you to tell us how you're different from your colleague over here on the stage. So I think big media, the liberal media, loves to see conservatives tearing each other apart, and that perhaps in the next debate, maybe all the contenders ought to get together and say, hey, let's agree to keep our focus on the real differences in America. It's not between us; it's between us and the left.
I agree. I mean, Gary, I felt like this was just a ratings attempt, and it's really shallow. I mean, everybody could see what they were trying to do.
Yes.
And the person that I thought probably was the best at rising above that, and he started out right at the beginning, was Mike Huckabee, who basically said, I'm not going to do that. And he talked about everybody else on the stage. I think people like that. That's what they liked about Ronald Reagan, is that cheery optimism. Yes, he was a strong conservative, and that's what people remember now. But I think sometimes people forget, his spirit and the smile that he always seemed to have on his face, when he was talking about the American people.
Kelly, you're absolutely right. I thought also that Governor Huckabee, Governor Walker, to some extent, Senator Cruz, all got shortchanged in the debate on the amount of time that they had. Now, I know it's difficult with 11 candidates up on the stage, but nonetheless, unless you interrupted the other night and got your 2 cents worth in, you really didn't get that much time out of a 3-hour debate. So I find myself I like the fact that we've got a lot of good people that are competing, but I do hope it winnows itself down fairly soon so that the 6 or 7 people that I think have a real chance, and I would certainly include Governor Huckabee in that, will have more of an opportunity to demonstrate their common sense solutions to a lot of the issues facing the country.
Gary, we've been having you join the show on Fridays to talk about the Iran deal. And in the debate, there was a real divide there between people like Ted Cruz, who said they would tear up the agreement on the first day in office, and others said that was just completely wrong and unrealistic, and you had to get allies to go along with you and all of that. So what was your take on that issue?
It seems like a small point. I actually think it's pretty significant, and for this reason. If you're running in these primaries and your impulse right now, long before you've become president of the United States, is to start explaining to people why it's going to take you a while and you're going to want to have meetings and talk to others about it, you're already signaling to me that when you get into office and you start hearing from the State Department and the so-called wise men in Washington,
there you go.
You're going to come up with excuses about why you won't abrogate this. I think it's pretty simple. The agreement really is a treaty, and it's null and void on its face because it was not ratified the way treaties are supposed to be in the United States Congress, and on that basis alone, a new president should say, I'm not bound by it, I will not follow it.
An action alert that we are sending out right now is one which gives each one of our listeners a chance to contact their 2 senators about House Resolution 3460, which would say that you should not release these funds because the agreement does not actually fulfill some of the earlier requirements. Does that make some sense to try to see if we get an up or down vote on a piece of legislation like that?
Absolutely. I think we should keep trying everything that we can. This is not some argument over the exact funding for a particular government agency. It's over whether one of the worst radical Islamic regimes in the world is going to end up not only getting nuclear weapons, but before that, getting $150 billion, which they will use for no good purpose that will affect us, Israel, and our other allies. So, yes, I think that's a great idea, and I think we should continue to look for other approaches that might try to slow this thing down, and I hope Republicans in Congress and others are thinking about whether there might be some sort of relief in the courts on a constitutional question of whether the president can eliminate sanctions if there was no actual vote in the United States Congress to do that.
Well, again, if you think that we should not send more than $100 billion, or release, I guess is a better way to say it, $100 billion to the mullahs in Iran, and that would be used to fund various terrorist organizations, we encourage you to go to our website, pointofview.net, or actually be looking for the email that we just sent out recently here so that you can look for it. It's entitled No U.S. Funding for Terrorists. I guess that's a little bit bold, but I've heard some people say that. Kelly?
No, I think that's exactly right. Gary, one other question, because I know foreign policy is an issue you really focus intently on. What did you think about Ben Carson's statement that he told Bush that we shouldn't go into Afghanistan?
Yeah, Kelly, I was a little disturbed by it, and it's so seldom that we have strong men or women of obvious Christian faith in the presidential competition that when we have that, I always want to give somebody like Dr. Carson the benefit of the doubt. And I'm sure a lot of good voters are looking for that in the next president. But when something like this comes out, it gives me pause, because as much as I admire his strong faith, we're living in a dangerous time in a dangerous world, and I'm beginning to wonder whether Dr. Carson fully understands what we're facing and what the implications of that are. I would say also, when Donald Trump said, when asked how he would handle Putin, he said, well, I would just deal with him. I would talk with him. I think we would get along fine. I think he's going to find that, this is not like negotiating with somebody in New York City. This is a guy that used to be in the KGB and has designs to remake Russia into a world power at the expense of the United States. So I think it's kind of disturbing that two of the front runners seem to be, but I guess there's no other way to say it, a little weak on foreign policy. And as I think Marco Rubio said, when you take that oath of office in this world, you're not going to have a lot of time for on-the-job training.
Well, Gary, appreciate you joining us. It's always great to get your feedback, and I appreciate you joining us today here on Point of View.
This is the interview I enjoy the most during the week, so thank you very much for letting me be with you, and you all have a great weekend.
We'll do it again. Let me just mention, just before we take a break here, that we gave you an action item, no U.S. funding for terrorists. So there's one opportunity for you to be involved. But also, you perhaps have received an email from me, or perhaps even a letter in the mail. And we, of course, have an opportunity for you on our website to help support this ministry, to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And one of the ways we encourage you to do that is to help us right now, because we have a $50,000 matching challenge. That means your gift right now in the month of September is doubled. And so your gift of $50 becomes $100. A gift of $100 becomes $200. We certainly do need to hear from you. And this is just a great opportunity on the table. Don't miss that opportunity. Visit our website, pointofview.net, or respond to the email we've sent. And we'll be back with more right after this.
2015 hasn't exactly been a great year for the church in America. Some are saying the battle for the soul of the nation is over and we lost. But remember what the angels said right after Jesus ascended? Basically, they said, what are you doing looking up in the sky? Yes, he's gone. He will come back one day, but in the meantime, get out there and be his witnesses. The church has faced many hard times, but God's not done with this world yet. It's critical that we know how to share what we believe and how to respond to the wrong ideas destroying people and our culture. What can you do? You can pray, and you can partner with Point of View. When you give by September 30th, one ministry friend will match your gift, $25, $100, $10,000. Your gift will be doubled up to a total of $50,000. Call now and give 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. Now's not the time to give up. It's time to double up. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
Weekend edition. If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. We'll get to some phone calls in just a minute. 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. We've been talking about the debate. I thought we'd stay there for just a little bit longer. And, of course, we mentioned Ben Carson. Today is his birthday, 64 years of age. So we know a little bit more about him and are learning more all the time. But the major topic of most of the people in the media is Donald Trump. Will he fade? Will he continue? The scandal of the day is whether or not he should have corrected an individual, I think it was in New Hampshire, who said Obama's a Muslim. And because he didn't, now have a press conference with Hillary Clinton talking about that. You had last night MSNBC, CNN, all sorts of people making a big deal about it. Don't think that's going to really affect the support for him. But where do you think this goes, Penna? Do you think that he continues all the way to the nomination, or does he fade? Does he drop? What are the thoughts about what might happen to Donald Trump?
Boy, you're asking me a very difficult question.
I know it is.
I think if I were going on my political instincts and having watched both debates and just watched him, I would say the fade will finally begin because the candidates started attacking him. I mean, you even had Bobby Jindal in the first debate, calling him a carnival act. And then, you had a lot of different comments, and he was so light on specifics that I think, reasonably you could expect him to start falling. But this has been a whole different election and contest between the Republican candidates. So you're asking me to predict. I'm sorry, I just cannot predict what will happen with Donald.
I'm with Penna as far as what her instincts say. I mean, I think the next poll that comes out 3 or 4 days from now, he's gonna be down. My wife watched the debate with me.
I'm glad you're going to bring this up because you said this off air. I'm glad you're going to say it on air.
And she's like your average American who doesn't pay real close attention, but pays a little attention. And she's seen like Donald Trump give a speech and all this. But, it's one thing to sort of throw a sort of jabbing remark when you're speaking and somebody else is across the country. It's another thing to do it right next to each other. And I think the average person gets really queasy and uncomfortable with and just, and so my wife was like, this guy is just, he's more than rude. He's just totally inappropriate and didn't like him. And yet she was okay when she would see him give a speech. And I think a lot of people will react that way because I think he obviously sort of, had to back down off of some of the things he was doing in that debate. So I do think you'll start to see that. I think you'll start to see a drifting. I think Carly will probably be the benefit of that. I think all this is short term, though. I mean, I think long term, as we get closer, people are going to start looking at not sort of, who's the entertainer in the debate and who does the best debate performance, but they're going to begin thinking about who they really want to be the president of the United States. And I hope some of these people will drop out. I mean, George Pataki and some of these other people, it's just ridiculous. It's a waste of space. And I think on the stage, on the main stage, I don't think he'll drop out, but the person who I think most everybody at this point knows has no chance of winning is Rand Paul. Mm. And, he's got some good positions and all that and some very fervent followers, but it's clear that he's not, and so I wish some of these people would move off so they provide more time for the people that, really are going to be the decision makers.
Let me put a few more things on the table, maybe help think this through a little bit. In a caucus, you have to stand in a room and say, I support this individual. And there have been some people that are arguing, it's real easy in Iowa or someplace like that to say, I stand with Ben Carson. I mean, he's such a lovable guy. Mm-hmm. It's a little tougher to go in that room and say, I agree with everything that Donald Trump has said over the last 6 months. And so some people said, even though I kind of like what he has to say, when it comes time to making a public affirmation, that might be different than if you're going to the polls, say in New Hampshire or in South Carolina. But some of these are caucuses and some of these are actually elections. So there is a little difference there, don't you think?
It's funny because I heard somebody who's very, very involved politically in Iowa speak, and he was talking about sort of ranking the Republicans. And he did exactly what I just did in answering your question. He put Trump totally to the side and just started talking about all the others because it's such a phenomenon. And I do think you're right, because when you, in Iowa, which is the first state in January, and it's not a primary, it's a caucus. And if someone has not participated in a caucus, you have to go there. You just go of your own accord and you show up and you start fighting for your candidate is basically the way it works. And so, there could be a lot of people there, which in Iowa there will, because everybody likes to get involved in that, or just a few. But you do have to be strong in advancing your candidate, and there are several votes sometimes and things like that. So, yes, I do think that it's going to take more courage to vote for Donald Trump in a caucus than it is in a poll where somebody calls you, and that could be a big factor.
And I think a lot of people like Donald Trump because he's performing a very valuable service for people who are conservative. Would the other candidates have been able to really go after, Bush and sort of the establishment wing of the party and bring Bush with all of his money and sort of the feeling of inevitability? Oh, look, he's got all the money, he's going to win. And you just sort of ride inevitability versus, well, do I like this guy? He really took that out of the picture, because Bush is now, people are wondering, I don't know if he can win,
That's right.
And some of the things he said stuck. He's not he's a very sort of passive looking persona. And that's usually not going to win at president, a passing looking persona. So I think a lot of people like him for what he's doing, although that wouldn't be necessarily their pick, to be in the president's office, and doing a number of different things that they might be as uncomfortable with. They really feel like, and I would agree, he's doing a great service to the more conservative base.
Let's talk money, because if there's one thing we learn when Kelly Shackelford's in here is that pay attention to the money. Now, of course, Donald Trump is using his own money, so he hasn't raised any, essentially. But in terms of raising money, Bush is first, Cruz is second, correct?
That's right.
And really sad to say it, because a lot of people around the table like Ben Carson, but the reality is, after he did a little better in the first debate, he did a little better fundraising, but he's still very far down. And as you've pointed out, we have a Super Tuesday coming up. And that means that you have to have an organizational structure, which means you have to have a ground game. It also means you have to have a fair amount of money to really compete in some major states with television. And so at that point, money really means a lot, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think people are saying months back, and I think they're right, that if you go into, December, let's say, without at least $50 million, and I think it might be higher than that, then you really have no chance. And so you're just, absent some sort of miracle situation, you're just not, you don't have anybody in the different states ready to move the campaign. So again, Donald Trump's trying to, do that without any of those types of things. But I don't think that's going to work. And I think when you get into the actual fight where you're going to have almost, 21 states or close to 30 states or something in the first month alone.
Wow.
And we're talking about states like Texas, which brings a huge number of electoral votes. I think you've got to have resources, and you got to have staff, and you can't get those resources at the last second. You've got to have them already in place. Now, some people have done that in Iowa. But if you look at the candidates that don't have the money, that's the only place they've done it. And so they're just kind of trying this, let's close my eyes, shoot the arrow over the building and hope it hits the gnat, and so it's real wishful thinking, but it's just not the way you're really going to win.
Everybody tries to win Iowa, and you can win Iowa, and that does give you a boost. But if you don't have the backup, the infrastructure to back you up, especially the Republicans have pushed things together, as Kelly mentioned. So everything happens very quickly. So really, you've got to be ready. If you could blow that victory in Iowa in a couple weeks.
And by the way, some people say, well, this is all bad. It's actually got some good points to it too. The person that is going to be president needs to be a person who can think ahead and plan and put things in place. So if you can't manage a campaign, and be smart about that, then you probably shouldn't be president.
Good
Yeah, I
point.
think it's good because one state like Iowa or New Hampshire should not have as much power as they've had in the past. So it's better.
Yeah. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll take some of your phone calls, 1-800-351-1212. I know one of our calls wants to ask a question about religious liberty, and we'll get some of those comments from Kelly. One of the articles we've posted here comes from our good friends at Liberty Institute, Keep Religion in the Military. You might remember last week that Cassie Doolin spent some time talking about Chaplain Motter, and let Kelly give us the rest of that story since he had a chance to be with him. And so we will also not only take questions and comments about candidates, we'll get back to some of the things we love to talk about, like religious liberty. We'll do that right after this.
Each year, World Magazine honors Christian poverty and exploitation fighting organizations with its Hope Awards for effective compassion. The magazine divides the nation into 4 regions and names a winner in each, plus an international winner. All the winners are profiled in the magazine, and readers are asked to vote. The overall winner receives $25,000, and the regional winners and runners-up also receive monetary awards. This is the 10th year World has honored these mostly small groups, which represent thousands of others that meet needs with the love of Christ. This year, World Editor-in-Chief Marvin Olasky wrote, and I'm quoting him, "It's an important time to remember the successes of these small organizations, because a disease sweeping across America could hurt their work, unless we find an antidote." In the aftermath of the U.S. Supreme Court's nationalization of same-sex marriage, pro-gay columnists are calling for the removal of tax exemption from any nonprofit organization that maintains a biblical position, end quotes. Demands that nonprofits live under a gay marriage regime could affect so many things about a ministry, like who gets to work there. Would a ministry be able to require that employees and volunteers hold a biblical view of marriage and sexuality? Would it be required to offer insurance, retirement, and other benefits to same-sex spouses? Would a ministry be able to offer the full counsel of biblical truth to those receiving aid? What about sleeping arrangements at homeless shelters and community homes? There have already been demands that rescue missions facilitate cohabitation for same-sex married couples. This marriage equality agenda is influential right now. Losing one's nonprofit status could destroy an organization. Christian nonprofits who cannot and will not heed demands to violate their principles would, for the first time, be required to pay taxes, and their donors would lose the ability to exclude gifts to them from their incomes for tax purposes. Would all church-related poverty fighting lose exemption? No. Denominations that approve same-sex marriage would likely retain theirs. There would be challenges, and maybe the courts would prevent this mischief. Maybe not. One solution to satisfy the demands of the marriage equality Gestapo might be to remove all nonprofit tax exemptions. How sad. We'd lose many of these groups who operate on slim budgets. These groups are what English statesman Edmund Burke called the little platoons. Little platoons exist in neighborhoods and communities, and unlike government bureaucracies, can more effectively target the root of poverty and sexual exploitation. Little platoons do a better job than government in changing lives. Faith-based little platoons do even better. With the loss or weakening of these organizations of compassion, government's role in social services, already huge, would increase. With relief and compassion groups stripped of their ability to stand against sexual sin, the evangelistic component of poverty fighting would evaporate. Tragic. So-called marriage equality is becoming a weapon against doing good. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Weekend edition, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. Let me take a phone call for someone that is going to ask a question about one of these religious liberty issues. Scott in Oklahoma, thank you for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome, after I got my phone working right. Are you still there?
We are here.
Okay. Well, this really is directed toward Kelly, but I've heard all 3 of you discuss the issue in Oklahoma on the Ten Commandments case. The Supreme Court has ordered a judge in the state to begin proceedings against about removing the Ten Commandments. They have given Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, till October the 12th. Now, I tell you, one of the comments I heard about this, I kind of cringed. It says, well, ACLU got a victory. And Kelly, I hate to say that, but it does seem like they have got a victory, at least at the moment.
Yeah, this is for those who don't know, the Oklahoma put up a 10 Commandments, and we actually helped them to make sure that their law was constitutional, and it was. I mean, it was patterned after the U.S. Supreme Court decision, and so some people went into court and tried to file a lawsuit in federal court to have it torn down, and of course the court said no, there's nothing wrong with this. The ACLU went into state court. And said, "Well, we're not making arguments under the federal Constitution. We're making arguments under the Oklahoma Constitution." And the judge rightly said, "This doesn't violate the Oklahoma Constitution." But then it went up to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court is, it's one of these courts that some of these states have liberal Supreme Courts, although they're not liberal states. And it's because of the way they pick their judges and different things like this, or people don't pay attention to who's elected when there are elections. And so this is a bad court at the Oklahoma Supreme Court. They took a provision that's been in their Constitution, for many, many years. It was put in there. And this is not me saying this. The Supreme Court said this. It was put in there out of anti-Catholic bigotry. Okay, they put a provision in to say essentially, if you're the Protestants who control the public schools, then everything's okay. But we don't want any, money ever to go to any, these Catholic schools or these Catholic people. And so that's the history of what's called Blaine amendments, like the one in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. That's what the court cited. It had never cited it in such a way in the past. It just did it for the first time here. So what's going to happen is probably it's going to be that they're going to have to move the 10 Commandments. I mean, if the governor wanted to say, well, Supreme Court, enforce your order, the governor could, and there's nothing the Supreme Court could do about it. But assuming the governor doesn't want to do that, they'll move it maybe across the street, to a private property or whatever else. But what the plan is now that this has been highlighted, the legislature is going to begin to move to repeal this provision out of their Constitution, which every Oklahoman should want to do. The moment that's done, that monument can go right back there on the land because, again, it was perfectly constitutional under the federal Constitution. It was just this Oklahoma Supreme Court that created this situation for the ACLU.
Mm. Again, we've looked at some of the cross cases and all that, and that's why we need to pay attention. But it's a good lesson to pay attention to who you might actually elect to the courts. And sometimes they have retention votes like they did in Iowa. So it's really important, Penna, as we've said before, to not just pay attention to who the president is and maybe even your senators and all that, but to pay attention to who you're going to elect to the legislature, to the governorship, and even to some of these state courts.
Yeah, and, we talked about the debate earlier, and I think that attention that has been paid is responsible for the wonderful array of talent that's up, a lot of those folks that are up there. People are ignoring them now and looking to the outsiders, but there is an array of conservative talent it's in the farm team that's coming up now in America, and that is good news.
That is. Kelly, we gave Cassie Doolin the opportunity to give your announcement, but I thought it would be good, again, to talk about Chaplain Motter. But also, we've had Michael Berry with us many times, and we've posted his article about Keep Religion in the Military. First of all, tell us what, again, happened with Chaplain Motter in case somebody might have missed it last Friday when we talked about it.
Yeah, Chaplain Motter is just a tremendous man. Not only has he been in the military for 20 years, but this is a guy that wasn't just a chaplain. I mean, he was a chaplain in Special Forces, SEAL Team 6 and things like that, and he deployed 14 times. I mean, his ratings were through the roof. I mean, statements like he's the best of the best, and this is a guy also with just a heart of gold. I mean, he just loves ministering to people, and that's what he was called to do. And he did that very faithfully and got all these great responses. And then all of a sudden what we had is we had a couple of homosexual activists that wanted to cause trouble for him, so they went to him in private counseling and they asked him what the Bible said about sex outside of marriage. And when he told them, they went and complained to the captain above him, and this captain violated numerous federal and other laws, and immediately what we would call fired him or relieved him of his duties, and also were scheduling him for a board of inquiry to kick him out of the Navy completely. And this was outrageous because not only did they violate a number of laws, but the way they did the alleged investigation violated all the regulations on that as well. And so we appealed that. And at the first appeal, we got somebody who, I can't explain why, but they did not reverse the appeal. They acknowledged that the whole investigation violated all the procedures and everything they had, but they didn't overturn it. Well, the good news is, and this was a shock to us, to everybody, and we had one of the biggest, well, I think the top law firm, the biggest law firm in the world, who joined the case with us. And we thought, we're going to appeal. They're going to say, get lost. We're the Navy. We'll do what we want. And then it'll go to the Secretary of the Navy. The same thing will happen. We will file our federal lawsuit, and we will win. But that was going to take years. And so it was really a shock just, 2 weeks ago, I guess now exactly, because I was in here on Point of View saying, I can't announce it yet, but some big news has just happened. And they not only, again, people thought, well, maybe if you win, he'll be able to retire and get all of his benefits and everything will be okay. But nobody thought that everything was going to be totally reversed, which is what happened. Not a lawsuit. It happened on appeal. He is back in the Navy. They asked him what assignment he wanted to go to next. Okay, that tells you something about it. He's been given that assignment, exactly where he wanted to go next. He's actually going to end up being in San Diego, which he has a home there. And so he won everything. And not only that, Captain Foss, the guy who started all this, he is now retired from the service.
Oh, how about that?
And they had some not too kind words for him.
Ooh.
So it was a complete vindication of Chaplain Motter. And this is important not just because of Chaplain Motter. This was the case for all chaplains. If you can throw a man out of the service after all this incredible service he's given for 20 years, because a chaplain answered a biblical question with a biblical answer, then we don't have chaplains anymore. Mm-hmm. And everybody knew this was really about the precedent that's going to be set. And I guarantee you this is sending messages to every chaplain in all branches of the service.
I think that is the key, the bottom line of this is the message it sends. I just also have to say kudos to Liberty Institute. Because when you think about it, that day when he was announcing and everyone was announcing that he was... and that Cassie was announcing on this show that Chaplain Motter was free and had won, Kim Davis was sitting in the jail. Mm-hmm. She was still there in that jail for sort of standing up for her own faith. So, she's out now, and I'm so proud of her. But I've got to say, yay Liberty for helping Chaplain Motter.
Well, again, celebrate the victory. And as we go to a break, I would encourage you to remember we have that matching challenge. It's just a great way for you to support this ministry and celebrate this great victory. And we'll talk about some more right after these important messages.
From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room. Tony and Elizabeth Jordan's marriage is turning into a battle, and their daughter is caught in the crossfire until Elizabeth meets Miss Clara.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
And learns that prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room. Now playing. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at warroomthemovie.com.
As you fight in your war room, please include Kirby and Point of View in your prayers. We have a very important opportunity right now. A wonderful friend has said that he will match every gift in September up to a total of $50,000. Point of View needs that support to keep equipping you for your life inside and outside your war room, both as you pray and as you live. So please call now and give generously. 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. That's 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
Second hour, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212, Weekend Edition. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. First hour, we spent a little bit of time talking about the debate, and we've got two very good articles, the memorable moments from the debate and why debates matter. We've also talked about religious liberty in that article, Keep Religion in the Military. I want to get back to that in just a minute. So if you'd like to join us on those issues, we certainly have covered that. Also, our Take Action item, no U.S. funding for terrorists. It has to do with a piece of legislation that has already passed the House and now has headed to the Senate, and this would actually block the release of those funds. Do you want to put $100 billion, almost $150 billion in the hands of the leaders in Iran that will then filter back to terrorists? I think we all know the answer to that, and so we encourage you to take some action on those issues. And this hour, we'll talk a little bit more about some issues of religious liberty, the humanitarian crisis in Europe right now. The Pope has some unexpected guests showing up in the White House, so we have lots still to talk about. But Kelly, just before we finish this idea of the military, I would encourage anybody that really wants to support our military, look at this piece that Michael Berry, who's been on the program with us before, has written, Keep Religion in the Military, because he reminds us that the founders, starting with the Commander-in-Chief, George Washington, all the way down, thought it was so very important to have religious ideas in the military so that the military does not turn into some kind of Nazi group or something like that, so that they are not just a bunch of mercenaries, but they understand that they're fighting for a just cause.
Absolutely, and I would encourage everybody, I bet everybody knows somebody in the military, take this link and share it with those people, because I think it would encourage them. Because, you know, if you know somebody who's in the military and they might know that there's religious freedom in the military, but they don't know why, they don't have some of this information. And it's the great thing is Mike Berry is not just a guy who was a litigator in the military. I mean, he's a very well-respected. In fact, he's, I don't know, in a week or so, the military has asked him to come and do a presentation for a bunch of their judges and their lawyers and other people on the appellate level about some different subjects on appeals. So great guy who really knows what he's talking about it when it comes with the military, and this is something that they can get. Again, it's at pointofview.net, or they can find it at libertyinstitute.org, and share this with other people.
You know what I thought was so interesting that he pointed out in this piece is that going back to George Washington, he thought that chaplains and just having religion and religious instruction was so important. And he tried to get the British government to fund that. He tried to get chaplains, and since he didn't get it, he started teaching. He started teaching troops himself and giving some kind of religious instruction.
Well, we're going to take some phone calls on that, and I know some of you would like to address that issue too, but the issue of the military. And if you just joined us, I know sometimes people can't listen to the entire program. In the last hour, we announced again that Chaplain Motter not only was vindicated, but more importantly, that this is a very good test case. So if you know other individuals that are in the chaplaincy, or we have, I just spoke last Friday at Dallas Seminary, did in the chapel there. I've met some that are going into that, and they are actually military chaplains who are graduating from the seminary. You would certainly want to find some of these articles and also be very excited that this decision came down in such a positive way.
Absolutely. Just great news for every chaplain. I mean, it's going to send it is sending a huge message throughout all the military with regard to chaplains, that there are laws, federal laws, protecting the rights of chaplains to be chaplains in accordance with their faith, to give biblical instruction, to counsel people, with truth and not with some sort of politically correct stuff. And so that's a really, really important to know about. And I would say, I don't know how many people are coming to Value Voters, which is next weekend in Washington, D.C. Of course, it's hosted by Family Research Council, but Liberty Institute is one of the sponsors of the event. All the major candidates are coming. Your people for president, you get to hear. But Chaplain Motter is going to be there, and you can meet him as well. And so there will be thousands of people from all over the country who want to come. Great speeches, very short but quick, but very great speeches by the leading people you hear about, and also get to meet some heroes. Kim Davis is going to be there as well. So a number of these people that you've seen sort of in the spotlight that really are normal people that just got thrown in the spotlight, you'll get to meet, talk to, and see right there in person.
Would you like to take a question on that? Let's see if we can take one of those before we get into some of the other victories. But
Sure.
Rebecca, North Carolina, WLGP, I think you had a comment about religion in the military.
Yes, I did. And about knowing people in the military. My husband is a retired Navy commander. I had an older son who was in the Marine Corps. And unfortunately, my younger son was killed in Iraq 10 years ago, this coming September 22nd.
Oh.
So yes, I have deep attachments with the military, plus grew up around Camp Lejeune. And I am absolutely thrilled to hear the results of Chaplain Motter's struggles. If our military cannot have the support of chaplains, then we're going to cease having Christians joining the military. They know that they need that support. They can always have God with them, but it sometimes helps to have a person that you can talk to go to with troubles. And all of my family definitely feels that these chaplains need to be able to serve as a chaplain, to serve our military as they would serve if they were in a civilian life as a pastor.
Amen. It's so important. I wish everybody could know Chaplain Motter themselves. He's just he's a big guy. He's tall. He was in the Marines before he became a chaplain, and he's a physical specimen. But his heart's bigger than his whole body. And he talks about holding and weeping with homosexuals in his one-on-one counseling. I mean, he loves people, and he loves what he gets to do, and he knows they need that love and support and help.
That's it. In fact, the chaplain that came to notify us of our son's death has become a friend. We're still in contact with him after nearly 10 years.
And that, it's interesting, Rebecca, because that's one of the things they refused to allow Chaplain Motter to do while this was going on. They had a sailor who died, and he wanted to go to the family and minister to them, and they would not let him. So that's the kind of thing that was happening before this was overturned.
That is so sad, because this chaplain and Captain Montez, or Lieutenant Montez, who was our notification officer, just stayed with me for hours because my husband was not even at home. And they were able to stay with me until my husband came home. And the support that they gave me during that time and waited to tell my husband the way he should have been told, I can't say enough about chaplains in the service.
Very good. Well, we have to take a break, but I could keep listening to you. It's just a great testimony and an illustration exactly why this was such a key victory, right, Kelly?
Absolutely. And again, anybody who can make it to D.C. next weekend, come and meet others like Chaplain Motter, but Chaplain Motter himself, you can shake his hand and give him a hug, because it's a great victory for all of us.
Think we could put him on the radio sometime?
I think so.
I'd love to do that. And then you get a chance to hear from him right then. Let's take a break. We've got some other victories to talk about. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, political correctness seems to be in full force these days in the public school, and common sense seems to be in short supply. The latest example is Laura, who was sent home with a note explaining that she could not bring a Wonder Woman lunchbox to school. I'm not kidding. You must be wondering what could be offensive about bringing a superhero lunchbox to school. Well, the school officials were glad to explain. The dress code of the school requests that students not bring violent images into the building. I think we could all agree with that. But the interpretation went the wrong direction. They define violent characters as those individuals who solve problems using violence. They therefore argue that superheroes fall into that category. Jonah Goldberg reminds us in a recent column that many other people fit into that category. George Washington and all the founding fathers certainly could be considered people who used violence to solve a problem. Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt could be put into that category along with most of our presidents. Our current president used SEAL Team 6 to take out Osama bin Laden. The security guard at the school and local mall, as well as any police officer, could be put into that category. Any member of the military, including everyone in the Pentagon, would qualify. I understand why the school administrators don't want to send the message here. We seem to be telling the next generation that violence is never the way to solve a problem. It may not be the best solution, but in times of war and terrorism, it may be the only way to solve a problem. At the very least, can't school officials use some common sense? Make a distinction between supervillains who use the powers for evil and superheroes who rescue people and use their powers for good. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Giving Films, 90 Minutes in Heaven, based on a true story, in theaters now, rated PG-13. More information at 90minutesinheaventhemovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Weekend edition, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. And we'll get back to some of those victories, but one of the things I mentioned at the top of this hour, and Kelly, you've been paying attention to this, and I think there have been a few others that have announced this, that when the Pope is in Washington, D.C. next week, he's going to have an audience, or the president's going to have an audience with him. But it's kind of intriguing to see who the president has invited to that particular list. The guest list includes the first openly homosexual bishop of the Episcopal Church, 2 Catholic homosexual activists, a transgender person, and at least one nun that we know of that supports abortion. Some people have called it apostates on parade. I can't even imagine another president doing that to a pope that would come and be in the Oval Office.
It's just unbelievable. It's not something you would ever do to anybody from another country, is to try to look for a way to offend them, let's see who we can invite that would offend my guests from overseas, much less the Pope. It's really disrespectful. The first thing that came to mind, although this is worse, I think, is when they did the LGBT colors outside the White House after the gay marriage decision. It's just sort of a really arrogant, in-your-face, disrespectful type thing to do, and it's unfortunately this is a consistent approach. I mean, there's no reason for this, except to just sort of flaunt and make a gesture almost to the Pope is what they're essentially doing.
It reminds me of the story we were telling before about Chaplain Motter, because he had people come in directly to challenge Christian teachings and then go and tattle about it like, he committed some sin by teaching the Bible. So, I mean, it's just another one of those instances where they continue to be in your face and look for things that they can then publicize that will be un-PC. So, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. It'll be a spectacle.
Love to get your comments about that. I know some of you come from a Catholic background. What do you think about the guest list for the Pope in the White House? If you had made that up as a Saturday Night Live skit, nobody would believe it. They would say that's so over the top, and that's, of course, exactly what's playing out. Kelly, I did want to talk about some other successes, because certainly Chaplain Mater is the top of the list, but we do have a link, as we always do, to Liberty Institute. If they look at your picture there, that will take them there, and the first thing they're going to see is you have some nice young, well, not so young, they're rather old ladies, I guess I'd have to say, senior citizens, elderly. I was looking for a good word. Yeah, but they're full of energy, and they actually had a wonderful kind of Bible study until somebody told them they couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, these were women who were in the senior center and were doing needlepoint. And one of them had a Bible and, mentioned some things about her faith. And anyway, before you knew it, of the 16, 14 actually became Christians.
Wow.
And they would do their needlepoint and read the Bible and talk about those things. And somebody in the center complained.
Whoa.
And then the next thing you know, all these seniors were being told by the officials that they were not allowed to talk about that or to bring their Bibles. And they were scared to even own a Bible at that point, because they thought they were going to get in trouble to have a Bible anywhere, in the scenes. And so we thought that this was going to be a case, because, they weren't backing down at first. The good news is they now have backed down before we had to file a lawsuit. These seniors won, and they now are doing their needlepoint, and they're talking about the Lord, and they're having their Bibles, and hopefully more and more of these seniors will come to know the Lord. But it's a neat story of people who, stood for their faith and called when the pressure came to try to shut things down, and now they've got a victory for their senior center.
Kelly, why is it sort of the default position of leaders of communities, homes, and different things that have government involvement? Why is it always their default to come down on practice of Christianity?
Well, I think spiritually it's because what is Satan's method? Always. His method is always fear and lies. And that's what this is. And so whenever the gospel starts to go out, or people start to do things that really do have eternal significance, I think, you're going to see the enemy use people to try to shut it down. And the method is always going to be fear and lies. And the truth is that the senior center is a government building. Yeah. And religion's allowed in a government building, okay? Just like it's allowed on a sidewalk, in a park, in a street, wherever is public. The religion is not banned in public in the United States. This is the former USSR. So those seniors have if they have a right to talk about, the football game that weekend, or talk about needlepointing, then they have a right to talk about the Lord. And the government doesn't have a right to come in and say, well, this is a government senior center, so you can't talk about that stuff. Now the government is being hostile to religion. They're discriminating on the basis of religion, and that would violate the law. So, there's always going to be an attempt to shut things down. And really the question is, are you willing to stand up? Are you willing to be at least as brave as these seniors were, these women, to say, hey, this isn't right. I think we can get help. Because if you do, you're going to win. And that message is going to continue to get out. But I can almost guarantee you, if you have any sort of effective ministry, this will come. There will be an attempt to intimidate you to stop it. And you've got to be willing to walk through that and be faithful.
And a lot of times you don't have to go to court.
No, like this one.
A good example. You've heard the phrase before, and it's been said many times, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And this one reminds me of the fact that, haven't we been down this road before? Didn't you have another senior senator, only a senior center, I should say, only about 20 miles from this particular studio, where you dealt with the same kind of issue? It seems like these pop up again and again and again. Do you feel like kind of it's the smash the gopher kind of game here, where you knock one down, another one pops back up again?
Sometimes, yeah, because people don't learn. I mean, you have things that are obviously the law, and yet people keep violating it, and you have to go in and correct them. But yeah, we had the Balk Springs case many years ago, and those seniors were just best clients you could ever have.
In World War II, though, too.
That's exactly right. And they stood up in the press conference and said, I fought in World War II for these freedoms, and I ain't going into the corner to pray. That's what they said. My favorite was the lady who, when Fox News came out to the senior center, she went over and said, "Come here," to the cameraman, and he was following her, and I went, "Oh, no, what is she going to do on camera?"
Oh, boy.
And she opened her trunk and pulled out a picket sign, and it said, "Don't mess with Grandma, she's mad." And I said, "I think that's going to make it on Fox tonight," and it was like the first thing you saw every 30 minutes on the news on Fox. So they were great. And they told me, they said, "You know what? This country started drifting away while on our watch." And they said, "Now we're older," and they said, "And so we're not, we think that we have a responsibility to help lead this thing back." And here these seniors were leading things back. And by the time it was over, they had not only won their case, they had totally changed the local city council. And in fact, one of the seniors was now one of the city council members. So you can do that if you're willing to stand up, if you're willing to do the right thing. Usually there's a lot of people that are going to join you. They just are looking to see, is anybody going to lead?
I love your patience, though. You're an individual that wins a case on a cross in the desert, and then you have to fight another one in San Diego. Now you're fighting 2 or 3 more. You win the case there in the senior center there in Balch Springs. Now you have to fight another one in San Antonio. You just have to be persistent, because these things just pop up all the time, and it's like whack-a-mole. And as soon as you knock one down and deal with it and get a victory, then the next one pops up. So
you do, but eventually, if you keep doing it, you eventually win a precedent that really solidifies it for the whole country. And but it usually, like anything, it doesn't happen the first time. You've got to keep winning, keep building that building until it's finished.
Kelly, I was recently in California. We took a little side trip down to La Jolla to see the Mount Soledad cross, and I took some shots of it. And that cross is big and strong, and I thought, that victory has been finally won. Mm-hmm. So that's really, we do have some enduring victories, and that's one of them.
I'm going to talk about another victory, but we have a break coming up here, and that is about these churches, because that's been a problem too. Sometimes they want to bulldoze them down. Others, they want to condemn the buildings and those kinds of things. And the situation out of Houston is one we'll talk about, but that has happened in other places. I did a commentary a while back, and from California all the way to the East Coast, you have churches that oftentimes, usually in the inner city, they're struggling with this, oftentimes African-American churches. So you have another victory, but another prayer target. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And if you'd like to know about that, of course, we have a link to Liberty Institute, and you can read all those stories and pass them on to others. But just before we do so, let me mention again, we do have our matching challenge. That's up to $50,000. And so that means that if you would like to give, and I hope that you would consider giving, we've gone through a rather lean summer. We would certainly appreciate your financial support. And we've had a generous donor step forward and say any of the gifts up to $50,000 that come in September, that click on that button, we'll match that dollar for dollar. It's a great deal. It's a great opportunity for you if you've wanted to support this ministry. So let me encourage you to do so. Visit the website pointofview.net. or respond to the email that we sent out just recently. We'll take a break, and we'll also take some more phone calls right after this.
As the great American philosopher Elvis Presley once said, when things go wrong, don't go with them. Now, I don't know what you think about Elvis. The point I want to drive home, yes, it's been a difficult year, but instead of giving up, we should double up. Double our efforts to communicate the truth about Jesus Christ. Double our time countering the false views around us. And double your partnership with Point of View, because helping you do those things is a big part of our mission. Now through September 30th, a gracious friend of the ministry is going to double your support on his own. So when I said I want you to double your partnership, do I want you to dig even deeper? Absolutely. But no matter what you give, up to $50,000, this friend will double that. So double up. This is a great time to make your first gift ever. Call 800-347-5151 or give online at pointofview.net. Please don't fret. Invest. Pray. Let's do this. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
Final half hour, if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, and we're going to have an announcement here in just a few minutes about a new outreach we'll have with Point of View. But Kelly, just before we took a break, we talked a little bit about this issue of these churches that find themselves sometimes just completely devastated. Sometimes they want to bulldoze them down. Other times they want to condemn them. And the sad reality is that this is another religious liberty issue that we need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. In fact, I'll mention, too, the one I know you're referencing. And if people haven't seen the video, I highly suggest that they go click on the link to watch the video of the Fifth Ward. Really powerful. Mm-hmm. This is the roughest area outside of Houston, Texas, where people went only fearing for their life. I was just talking to the other day to Craig James, the NFL football star and broadcaster,
Mm-hmm.
and he heard about this case, and he said, I worked there a little bit during the summer, and he said, and he said, in the short time I was there, a milkman or whatever who was on my route was murdered.
Oh my goodness.
He said, so that's the kind of thing that was going on there. It wasn't a safe place at all. Well, these are churches who moved in. These black churches said, we're going to go into this community and redeem it. And they went in there, and people's lives began to change. And even like there's a Black Panther on this video who weeps about how his life was turned around, and really began to change over decades, began to change that community and improve it, and got extra land to do an activity center for the community. And then all of a sudden, the government says, hey, this place is doing a little better. So we think we will come and forcibly take their land and bulldoze the churches and build something where we can make a profit. And unbelievably, I mean, we had to go into court on behalf of these black churches. And at this point, we've got a mixed bag. We've got a victory in that one of the churches we've saved because they have completely said, okay, we're backing off. We're not going to take on this church. But the other church, we want their property. And they had a judge who unfortunately made the wrong decision and said, yeah, well, we think that you can take their property. And so we're now on appeal trying to get this overturned. So we've been able to save one of the churches, but the other one we're still fighting with the government over. Now, they're at least not going to take their church itself, but they're trying to take the land where they held their tent revival and everything else. So we're still in a battle on that. The other one I'll tell you about is a case we've been battling here for a good while down at Cornerstone Church, where they actually banned the church from being in the community. They were taking up taxpayer property with this non-taxable entity, and they made it illegal for them to be in the city. We went into federal court. We had no choice. And here's the neat thing. We talked to the judge, and what did we reference when we said, you don't have a right to do this? We reference, I don't know if you remember this, the Opulent Life Church case that we won a few years ago out of Holly Springs, Mississippi, went all the way to the Federal Court of Appeals, the best case in the country defending the rights of churches. We pointed to that. The judge basically said, they're right. And now the city is allowing this church, and they're about to start their process out there. So unfortunately, churches have to fight for the right just to be a church and to minister to their community these days. But the good news is, if they're willing to stand and call us, we can help them, and we're winning these cases. It's just in the past, you didn't used to have to fight to do good work in your community as a church.
You know, Penna, we've said before, and we talked about it earlier today, that you have to pay attention to some of the people further down on the ballot. Because in this case, we're talking about city council, we're talking about, and some of these battles aren't these big battles of 10 commandments or crosses, although we talk about that because this is a national program. Some of these are zoning issues with churches and Christian schools.
Yeah. City officials, it's very important to see who you've got in those cases. And as we've heard from many of our Point of View listeners and people that have listened for a long time, it's really important to, if you hear that little bitty call from God that you might run or one of these offices or the school board or city council or whatever, you can make a huge impact on your community. And sometimes it's not that hard to win because people just are not paying attention. They're not that involved. So if you get a few supporters, you can win.
Well, let's say you're out there and you're in a big church. I want to tell you a quick story because I think this is so typical. We had a big church, and they were rebuilding part of their church, making it bigger so they could hold more people. And they needed to use a local theater for one of their Sunday morning, Sunday schools and different things. And the theater was fine with that, but the city wouldn't let them. The city had some plans for some alcohol near there, and they didn't want any churches getting near there. And so they tried to keep the church from using the facilities. Well, we ended up fighting with the city, and they decided in the last minute that they didn't want that fight, and so they backed down. The church got the use of the facilities until their church was built. That was because they were a big church and they had power, but they learned from that what the city was doing. And so guess what happened a few months later when a small church was trying to form across the city and the city council was trying to keep them from forming? Now you had not only that little church, you had that big church and all the other churches that the big church contacted, and there was a force in that city that was saying, you're not going to do that in this community, and it changed the whole community because they were willing to do that.
Well, again, just some great success stories that I wanted people to hear about because oftentimes they don't hear these, and I hope you enjoy hearing these here on Point of View. So a lot of things to talk about, and again, if you want to find out more about some of these stories and support Liberty Institute, we have a link to it on the website. But I wanted to announce before we take our next break a new venture, and that is anybody that's listened to Point of View knows that we spend a fair amount of time talking about how we can reach the next generation, the millennial generation. And last week we had, you guys don't know this, but I jokingly said everybody around the table, I could have been the parents of all of them. But nevertheless, one of those was Jonathan Bodner, and he is with us today. And we today are announcing the beginnings, and I think it's a very good beginning, of a new website and a Twitter feed called The Relevant Minute. Jonathan, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, Kirby, thanks so much. We are really, really excited about therelevantminute.com. That's therelevantminute.com. And what we really kind of set out to do with this new organization, this new project, was answer the question to a millennial generation: why do politics matter to me? Like this current event, what's happening, these debates, like everything, like why does it matter to me as a millennial? And so we created therelevantminute.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Relevant Minute. And all of our social medias are on the website and everything. And we really we have a lot of content backed all by Point of View's perspective, all by Point of View's content, and backed by great sources on the website. And so just go ahead and take a look at therelevantminute.com.
And again, one of the things you try to do is take some of our ideas and articles. I know that we have one of the commentaries by Penna Dexter, but it's kind of shortened a little bit. Some of mine, my commentaries, some videos and things of this nature, because we recognize that there are some people that will sit and listen to the 2-hour program that we do. We also recognize that there are people your age that are going to say, tell it to me in 60 seconds or less, or tell it to me in a 2-minute, and I might watch all 2 minutes of a YouTube video. So it's a little different, right?
Yeah, we really want it to take these complex concepts that Point of View kind of discusses and dissects, and we want it to break it down for a mobile and a younger generation, so everything's kind of easier to read. And especially those articles that you're going to find on the website are they're in a format that are very, very easy to kind of go through as a younger person. And it doesn't take very much time, and we'll be producing videos, very short videos and podcast spots and everything with this as well.
Well, again, I just think that you need to go to therelevantminute.com, and those of you that have some sophistication with Twitter, go there as well. And you really encourage people to click on it and to like it, but also maybe to cut and paste it and put it on their own blog, Facebook page, or others. Send it to some young millennials that might not necessarily be the ones that would always listen to Point of View, but will benefit tremendously from some of this material, right?
Oh, definitely. We really hope that people share the articles that we post out on our Facebook feed and on our Twitter and everything, and use that content to start a conversation with their friends and to kind of just engage other millennials in understanding the importance and the relevance of what's happening in our world.
Well, again, that's why it's called the Relevant Minute. We're trying to make it relevant. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'd love to get your comments around the table as well. But also, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We recognize how important it is to reach every generation, but especially the younger generation may not be as likely to listen to Point of View on radio, or if they do, they'll listen to it on their phones. And most importantly, oftentimes we need to say, well, why is that relevant? We talk about Iran and the deal that we talked about with Gary Bauer. Well, what does that mean? And what about this campaign? And even when we come back, we can talk about the refugee issue in Europe. And we've talked today about some other aspects of the military and religious liberty. These are all very important issues. And so we want to try to make it relevant, but put it in maybe a different format so that it will have some possibility of spreading around. Make it go viral, as they say. We'll take a break, come back with more right after this.
Each year, World Magazine honors Christian poverty and exploitation fighting organizations with its Hope Awards for effective compassion. The magazine divides the nation into 4 regions and names a winner in each, plus an international winner. All the winners are profiled in the magazine, and readers are asked to vote. The overall winner receives $25,000, and the regional winners and runners-up also receive monetary awards. This is the 10th year World has honored these mostly small groups, which represent thousands of others that meet needs with the love of Christ. This year, World Editor-in-Chief Marvin Olasky wrote, and I'm quoting him, "It's an important time to remember the successes of these small organizations, because a disease sweeping across America could hurt their work, unless we find an antidote." In the aftermath of the U.S. Supreme Court's nationalization of same-sex marriage, pro-gay columnists are calling for the removal of tax exemption from any nonprofit organization that maintains a biblical position, end quotes. Demands that nonprofits live under a gay marriage regime could affect so many things about a ministry, like who gets to work there. Would a ministry be able to require that employees and volunteers hold a biblical view of marriage and sexuality? Would it be required to offer insurance, retirement, and other benefits to same-sex spouses? Would a ministry be able to offer the full counsel of biblical truth to those receiving aid? What about sleeping arrangements at homeless shelters and community homes? There have already been demands that rescue missions facilitate cohabitation for same-sex married couples. This marriage equality agenda is influential right now. Losing one's nonprofit status could destroy an organization. Christian nonprofits who cannot and will not heed demands to violate their principles would, for the first time, be required to pay taxes, and their donors would lose the ability to exclude gifts to them from their incomes for tax purposes. Would all church-related poverty fighting lose exemption? No. Denominations that approve same-sex marriage would likely retain theirs. There would be challenges, and maybe the courts would prevent this mischief. Maybe not. One solution to satisfy the demands of the marriage equality Gestapo might be to remove all nonprofit tax exemptions. How sad. We'd lose many of these groups who operate on slim budgets. These groups are what English statesman Edmund Burke called the little platoons. Little platoons exist in neighborhoods and communities, and unlike government bureaucracies, can more effectively target the root of poverty and sexual exploitation. Little platoons do a better job than government in changing lives. Faith-based little platoons do even better. With the loss or weakening of these organizations of compassion, government's role in social services, already huge, would increase. With relief and compassion groups stripped of their ability to stand against sexual sin, the evangelistic component of poverty fighting would evaporate. Tragic. So-called marriage equality is becoming a weapon against doing good. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for just a few more minutes. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. And again, we mentioned the relevantminute.com, and that's a great resource that you might want to take advantage of, and we'll talk a lot more about it in the future and probably send out an email. But I just thought some of you like to see the first few articles that are there and many more to come. Some of the videos that we've produced, we've had the uncensored videos, and this is just another format to take some of this material and educate the next generation. And Penna, we all cut our teeth on Point of View, listening to Marlon Maddox and everything. So that is certainly the case. Next week, we're going to have an anniversary show, just kind of commemorating the fact that Point of View started back in 1972 in September. So we'll look at some of those kinds of stories as well.
We've been around a long time, and we've had to, of course, you have to change with the generation and speak to the generation that exists. And I, of course, indoctrinated all my 3 children who are now adults. So they are pure conservatives through and through, and they're able to articulate some issues. But I am often very surprised at even Bible-believing kids whose parents maybe just went to church and didn't talk politics, didn't talk current events as much in the home. And that's probably the normal Christian family. So I'm often shocked at their opinions on issues, that are not biblical sometimes, just because they haven't been taught how to take a biblical worldview and put it in to, how you look at things like current events, like foreign policy and all of that. So the Relevant Minute, the idea of this is, to help those young people to be able to understand and then articulate and pass along those types of things. I think it's an awesome idea.
Yes. Well, and I want to take a few of these religious liberty articles, Kelly, and educate listeners out there, because the younger generation take for granted that they've always had that liberty, and they've only maybe seen the loss a little bit but they don't know what America used to look like. And so that's, I think, a very big challenge that we're going to face in trying to put some of those articles together.
Absolutely. I mean, the people who have seen, the direction we've gone over, the last 40 years are much more aware. I mean, people over the age of 60, for instance, do not have to be convinced that there's a war on religious freedom in the country. And really, those, as you go down, don't, until you get down to people who are so young that, like, how was it different? Oh, you mean there's danger? It was really fun. Well, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago. I was doing an interview on a Christian TV interview, and in that, it just naturally came out where we talked about, and I said, look, I really believe that religious freedom is going to be either lost or saved in the next 5 years. And I gave a number of reasons I said that. And one of the young interns who's working for us afterwards came to my office and she said, that just blew me away. She said, is really? She said, I'm seeing this stuff happen, but I didn't realize it was coming so quickly. And, I was able to pull out like Penna's commentary that she did about the LGBT conference and how they said we're going to end religious freedom as a defense within 3 years. And there was like $10 million of support that had already come from foundations for that effort. And I just started talking about why I said that and how I really do think it's going to be that quickly, and we're either going to win or lose. And so here was a young person who was working on religious freedom issues and saw what was going on, but had no context for it because they didn't realize how fastly things were moving. They didn't know the past and see the sort of trajectory of the way things were going. And so it's really easy for people that don't have that larger frame of reference to need help, understanding, oh my gosh, this could go before, I'm even married and have kids. I better get involved in this battle. It's going to affect me. It's going to affect my marriage. It's going to affect my kids and what we can teach them. It's, there's a lot of that stuff that they wouldn't naturally be thinking about because they just don't have the frame of reference yet.
Well, and again, sometimes we try to connect the dots by saying, what just happened in San Antonio and that senior center happened in Balch Springs before. Or we had Robert Spencer on a while back, and he was talking about the fact that he predicted that there would be a flood of refugees because this is ISIS has a plan of taking Rome by 2020. And you're going, well, they don't militarily, they can't take Rome or they can't take Europe by 2020. But the plan was to have refugees and all sorts of individuals like ISIS sneak in that way. Well, then when this takes place, we can tie it back to a story that obviously a lot of people would not know because either they don't hear the program or they don't have some history. And since I'm the oldest one around the table, I always like to say maybe I can give a little more history or perspective to some of that. So those are all very important issues. So I'm excited about this new venture. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea, and I hope people will take full advantage of it. And it's going to be fun to see how the commentaries that we do are even, I thought taking my ideas down to 3 minutes was hard. They're going to take it down to 1. But really, it's great to see that and to make it, very consumable for the millennial generation and really all of us. We are all very busy, so it's great to have something that's quick and easy.
And just for our benefit, when they click on that for more, they get the whole article. So again, they can read a little bit more. But just before we run out of time, Kelly, I know that we're going to be doing a program coming up real soon about the need to register people to vote. We're going to be talking with George Barr and a few other people, and we're talking about millions upon millions of born-again Christians who are not registered to vote. And one thing I wanted you to maybe address one more time is, what can a church do or not do? Is it possible for a church to register someone to vote? Is it possible for a pastor to address issues? Is it possible for a pastor to bring a candidate into the congregation? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, number one, I would tell people we have a resource on the website, libertyinstitute.org. If you just go under resources at libertyinstitute.org, one of the things will be pastors or churches and elections. What's the law? And it's very simple, really, which is, churches, first, pastors as individuals, they can do whatever they want to do. They're American citizens. They can be the chairman of somebody's campaign if they want to. So there's no restriction on the pastor as an individual. The only restriction is on the church if it's a 501c3 organization, which most want to be a 501c3 organization. And you don't have to file anything to be 501c3. It just means you're a protected nonprofit organization like a church. Nonprofit 501c3s, there's only really two things that they can't do. They can't use the resources of the nonprofit entity to endorse or to oppose one candidate over another. So they can't, like, say, we endorse so-and-so for president. Well, I don't know. I've yet to hear of the church that wanted to say, First Baptist Church of Jacksonville, Mississippi, or whatever, what Jackson, Mississippi wants to endorse so-and-so for president. Nobody wants to do that. So that's not an issue. The other thing they can't do is give their resources, their money. So they can't say, hey, here, we'd like to open the church treasury and get those coffers out and give some of this money we're going to use for the Lord to give to a candidate. Again, I haven't seen this really occurring. So really the things that churches want to do, registering people to vote, giving them nonpartisan voters guides, just so that they understand here's what the differences are in the candidates. You vote who you want to. Inviting the candidates for an election to come speak to the church. And if you invite all of the candidates in that race and only one shows up, you've done everything you're supposed to do. Talking about the issues that the campaign are about biblically. All of these things are things that there's no question the churches can do. And in fact, I would say that you're really violating Ephesians 4 if you're not doing those things. The job of the pastor is to equip the saints for works of ministry. And in this country, one of the duties we have is to actually go in and represent Christ in all areas of society, including in the voting booth. And that includes, we get to pick whether our leader is a person of character and Christian values or isn't. And to have that responsibility and to throw it away is really irresponsible. So we should be registered to vote. We should get this information. The churches should be a part of this, and people should go and make sure they vote for leaders that they would be proud of over their children and their grandchildren.
That's all the time we have. I want to thank Andrew and Catherine Shamilla for their help behind the scenes. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.
From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room. Tony and Elizabeth Jordan's marriage is turning into a battle, and their daughter is caught in the crossfire until Elizabeth meets Miss Clara.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
And learns that prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room. Now play. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at warroomthemovie.com.
As you fight in your war room, please include Kirby and Point of View in your prayers. We have a very important opportunity right now. A wonderful friend has said that he will match every gift in September up to a total of $50,000. Point of View needs that support to keep equipping you for your life inside and outside your war room, both as you pray and as you live. So please call now and give generously. 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. That's 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.